Hey everybody, thanks for joining. We're talking today about transient bugs, and this is a CEO OKR for the quarter Q4. Usually we should have gotten started about probably, or at least organizing this part of it about 2 weeks ago, but it's the first week of the quarter, so at least we're getting moving in the first week, which is improvement over some of the previous quarters. So there's an agenda document and kind of laid out there. One, the CEO OKR that's kind of listed above, and that kind of flows through to engineering. I forget if it's on, I don't think it's on the product OKRs, but I know that product is supportive of this. I've also listed the development OKR, which kind of is also in there as well. And then Michelle's been kind enough to already find several of these and I think start actually working on them. So the bar is, I'll say, fairly low in regards to, if you read it, it's fixed 7 transient bugs, which we already have more than 7 that we could go tackle, and then improve quality tooling, which I'm not sure exactly how we would do that part of it, but that's kind of why we're here, is kind of discuss it. So I have a list of questions down below, and I'm looking for some collaboration and feedback from everybody involved. In particular, Josh, I'm letting you be our inner channel to product to make sure we're not circumventing product prioritization, but all at the same time thinking about this more holistically, because my view is that some of these problems could actually be problems that really annoy customers and eventually cause our score to go down. Not eventually, actually, probably cause our score to go down currently. So I want to make sure we're thinking about this in the right way. So yeah, so the first one is fixing 7 transient bugs seems pretty easy given we have so many identified. How do we want to track these? Looking for suggestions there, like do we want to label or something else? And Tim, go ahead. Tim, you want to verbalize what you've already started writing?
Yes. Yeah, I simply wanted to get a feeling from everyone who already looked into it. What is your feeling? Where are we? Is this something 10 bucks, 30 bucks, 100 bucks? That we have a good estimate on that part and a better understanding. Do we need huge tooling to find everything, etc.? So is this something we can already put a number on it?
I think what Christopher's about to offer might be better, but I would say right now I would estimate already 30 or more, but not just with merge requests, other groups as well.
Yeah, so I think if we look at it holistically, a lot of them are right now in source code, but I think that's because that's where people are heavily using it. Verify, I think, also has some as well, which that's what I'm expecting is once we start looking at Verify, we would see this. In a lot of cases, it's something that like the state will be there, and then you'll do some action, and they won't update the state correctly. So then you refresh the page, and it comes up correct, as an example. So, but yeah, I don't think it's thousands. So I'm hesitant to say hundreds, right now, because it just feels like maybe 100 to 200 right now. Though I think we got to figure out how we're gonna like treat this from a quality perspective, so that like as these pop up, we actually kind of prioritize this in some fashion. Because like right now, I think most of these would be P4s, which we may never get to, as an example. So. And then on the second question, Tim, you want to go ahead and verbalize it?
Yeah, and the other thing was really if we already have some sort of feeling, if this is more front-end, back-end, quick fixes, easy fixes, or do we really need architecture changes? So what I mean with that is, for example, in my last job with working in banking, the classic problem was you send something to an API, the API says, yeah, job well done. And then it went through 400 old school legacy systems that took 30 seconds to finish that job. So you send something to one API that sent already, yes, all done. Then of course the front end goes to the other API and fetches the current state, and the current state is still the old state because it didn't went through the whole system. So do we need to some extent architecture changes there? Or the other thing is what came to mind is, should we take another look to make it also more robust and more from the UX side, give more feedback with something like real time One of the classic topics is if you have a long-term running process that you give more steps in between. Right now, the only thing is like a spinner, and you can count the points in the spinner, but you don't have any insight where you are in the process. And with real-time and real web sockets, we might be able to reduce that risk and can give more feedback to the front-end system, but also to the user, if that might be something that we should bring on track also in this whole working group setup of the OKR. What do you think?
I think that's the right way to think about it, because I think, at least in some of the cases that I've seen, I've got to believe that there's back-end performance issues that we're hiding as what we call a front-end issue. Probably the best example is that when you apply a suggestion, it doesn't then pop up because it's looking at the current state and it's not seeing that the state's been updated or even in process of being updated. So I think that's a case of we probably have to set up some parameters around that to say, okay, here's our expectations on what the backend's doing. So then the front end code's written correctly to be responsive to that, but then at the same time also hold the backend accountable to those performance metrics in some fashion. Typically, the way you'd see this is through API metrics. We're not an API first company, but we'll have to figure out like how we're going to basically assess that from the perspective. So, yeah. So I think you're on the right track, which is I think that's like some are going to be just honest goodness front end bugs, but also some are going to be this back end front end interaction, because I've definitely seen that in a few places. Has that been your experience, Michelle, or have they been kind of any other insights?
Both of you are totally correct. In the cases that I've seen that are backend, it's performance. I haven't seen a lot, although I think there is one where the backend just isn't returning the status. Most of the time, the backend is returning the status. It just takes a really long time. I think there are definitely some UX ones where we're just not giving the proper feedback. And then I think we have a lot of just front end issues.
Okay. And we are really bad with error reporting, to be frank. It's like, what? Didn't work. And to some extent, I think perhaps we can also simply improve the robustness by increasing simply the level of detail that we give back to the system, to the front end, and make simply the front end, the state management way more robust. So cool, thanks. Nick, you are next.
Cool, thanks. So I was discussing this with Ramya this week. We have another source that can help identify which are flaky end-to-end tests on staging and production. So in the quality test automation playbook, the test by itself is predictable. So it has a clear set timeout, wait time, polling, and we have retries and all that. And when something fails, it's a sign of flakiness and transientness. So the other factor that adds to this is network latency at the time, performance, or the behavior of the app. Or maybe we're not refreshing the state in a timely manner and whatnot. So this could be another area that we look into, especially in source code and verify, because I think these are the highest numbers in miles now right now. That's probably where the feedback is coming from. I'll pause on that before I go over the next set of
cool. Yeah. What do you think is the ETA for surfacing these bugs? Because I think that's a good vector for us to kind of look at. I treat it as iteration, so like maybe surface a few of these, so then we can look at them and say, okay, like is this a path we want to head down, or is this something that like we think is kind of hitting the mark from our perspective?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. We already the SATs on call already create failure issues if something fails, and we label them as flaky. So it could be a matter of like, Ramya, maybe you and Joanna can just look through the list that we have and just pick like the glaring ones, top 3 or top 5, and let's work together with development as a group.
Okay.
And this also will help us because these are makes the test stable, and it directly correlates with test coverage.
Okay, so I'll assume like sometime in the next week is what I'm hearing from that perspective, because they already exist and it's just modifying getting them collated. Okay.
Totally doable. Yeah.
Cool.
Ramya, anything you want to add on to that?
No, I think we're good. And just wanted to, I think you mentioned that as well. We have an OKR to work on that as well. So, and yes, when we were discussing in the OKR as well, like we wanted to finish it as soon as possible so that we can actually give the list to the development team. So yeah, next week should be good. Yes.
Cool. Yeah, we explicitly track that in the KR as well to identify those areas. Check with them. And then I'm gonna swap D and E because I just want to vocalize this. I think I know where D already. But just making sure that by transient, it's not the perception of something didn't work, and work within a matter of days, because that could also be when we roll forward the bug fixes. And that's different from what transient is in this business case.
Yeah, I think so. I think right now, rough transient definition of transient is something that appears wrong, and then you do it again, and it comes back correct, as an example from that perspective.
Right, within a day, within your interaction.
Much tighter. Like let's say within 3 to 5 minutes, roughly.
Sounds great. Thank you.
We had a definition in the past which said you click so long on the button until you rage quit. That's a transient bug and nothing happens, or it doesn't work. So yeah, I think that's
with the retries on the framework, we treat it like a malicious QA engineer. Just keep on clicking for like max timeout, and then when the max timeout hits, okay, I give up. Then that's a definite failure. Josh, I think you have the next one.
Yeah, I was just had a theory. I mean, the ones that like really bug me are like the apply suggestion one that bites me all the time. And you click it, and it, in theory applies. You hit a spinner, and then the spinner stops, and it says like apply suggestion again. I mean, like what? And then you hit apply suggestion, and it spins, and nothing happens, and it's like, and then they're like hitting apply suggestion, and all of a sudden the thing just it gets errors. You refresh, and it's done. It's like. Like that's like a daily event. Yeah, so my thought there is, that I wonder if a lot of these are ones that involve like, triggers that go into Sidekick that then Sidekick then has to do something. And then that's like, could be fast, could be slow. We have different queue like SLO, like, SLOs, but it's not really guaranteed. And then there's insufficient synchronization that happens when the front end's trying to refresh state. Maybe and I think to Tim's point, right? Like maybe that one job is complete, but the caches haven't been refreshed or like re-updated again, and you end up with this like really strange behavior going on. So I wonder if there's some patterns we can find here of I don't know, to track some of these things down. We can get some frameworks or something like that. Maybe the real-time work or something like that to try and tackle like subsets of these. But yeah.
Or at least classify them as such, because then like it may be a working pattern, so then we don't repeat the same errors. I think that's probably the biggest thing we got here is maybe it's something that if we can start building in, so then we're not repeating the same mistakes, it's less likely to happen. So I like that idea.
Yeah, I added in point Roman numeral 3 is if we can do some pattern matching in the call logs, like the logs map to controllers, then you can map to UI components calling to those controllers, and then we can be a lot more proactive in identifying these. Tim and Michelle, you have a Roman numeral 1 and 2 you want to vocalize for the call?
Rookie mistake, not unmuted. Yeah, the main thing is perhaps we really have a good option here to decouple completely and give better updates through real time, as we should have the setup for it by now. So that might be something that we can also take another look. But I also believe that there's a good bunch of quick wins, or simply deep dive, stay there, fix a lot of things, and then come back, and it's much better. I think we are already on a very good track with figuring those out. And Michelle, you had the next point.
Yeah, I wrote this here, you all can read it, but I think Tim said it in fewer words. Decouple completely is probably a better way to say that. On the merge request page, which is a very limited view of all the transient bugs that I think we probably have across stages, it wasn't actually Sidekick, it was rather a separate polling process was overriding the applied suggestions on the front end. And if we could decouple a lot of that, merge request has so much going on and separate things, checking statuses all the time. And so I think a lot of the conflicts there is probably what's calling it. So if we can just kind of pull some of that out, I think we'd be in a better place.
Yeah, I think what I also wrote a little bit further down, I think we need to do like an architecture walkthrough a little bit and take a deeper look on the front-end state management, because that was exactly the problem that we had on the issue page with the bad performance, where we saved 2 seconds, which was in reality that we started the polling before the first load even finished. Why in the heck in the first place would you start polling before the other thing is loaded and almost start immediately, but rather wait like 2 seconds or so? And perhaps we need to also can revisit how often we are polling and what we are polling and things like that, that we simply have a better and more thorough state management. Yeah. Good.
Is there a staff or senior person we should pull in to kind of look at that, or how do you want to approach that?
Phil, he is from that area. He should
Okay,
take
that
a
was
look.
fast. This person is Phil is interested. But yeah.
Phil Hughes, Phil H.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think Phil is interested because I think he already has like a proof of concept and an issue. And I think
okay, that's fine. I just like I always like to make sure that when we're pulling someone in, they're engaged, right? So that's the key. Okay.
I will get motivated then. Good, Mac, you're next.
Me already? Roman numeral 3 under F. Yes, I think I vocalized this already. That's in line with what Josh was thinking. So I think it's probably at the end of the workload here to be more proactive. We can skip over to number 2.
Okay. Yeah, and we're going to run out of time here. So just FYI, everybody, I'll set up something maybe early next week to kind of continue the discussion, because it feels like we've already made some good progress here as far as different pieces. Really, the next question is something for you to think about, Josh. I don't know if I want to put you on the spot quite today, but like the problem with these is obviously it's hit senior leadership visibility, probably just because of the volume of them. But the question would be is like, I think in a lot of these cases, we would characterize these as P4s, and we need to determine whether that's like the right way to be thinking about these, or if there's other things. But I don't know if you're receptive to that idea, or if you think let's wait and see, or if you have any feedback around that from that perspective.
Yeah, no, this is the classic like OKR conflict and alignment issue, probably that we just repeatedly see. I wonder if we can treat these as like sus/UX type issues, because clearly I think this is happening because people are frustrated by them and they don't instill confidence in the platform, I think they're clearly typically UX problems, right? And so I wonder if we can sort of treat them in that prioritization framework, which will cause them to be somewhere in the vicinity of 8, priority 8, below like availability and performance and instrumentation, but above the general sort of like bucket of 11, which is like everything else. Or we just try and drive awareness with the company, but we'll then get conflict around the sus and UX OKRs that we're having, and that might not be ideal. So I wonder if we could try and include this in there, and if we can get buy-off from UX and other product leadership that this is a good class of issues to try to solve from a UX standpoint. All right, you're on mute.
Where would it be from a UX perspective? I mean, I'm sorry, a severity perspective. Like I said priority in here, but I was probably thinking severity, unfortunately, and confusing the two. Like,
yeah,
or would they be something else?
Mac, you probably have a better handle on severity than I do. But
so if I may just take 30 minutes of all your time, we did this with UX recently. And what we did was we added an escalation line for Christy, her to drive sus and usability score. And this is treated as an escalation for the general bucket of bugs. So some of the UX people will label it as generic S4, but when it affects usability, it may be an S2 UX. And this is the definition so far. For example, can't figure this out, why this is happening. I think that some of the transient-ness could also be clarified more, because I'm sure the users are confused when they see the widget flip-flopping the status and all that. So I think we need UX hand in this, and open to adjust this however works best.
Okay, I think that makes sense actually. So these would probably be not SEV4s, but SEV3s based on what I just quickly glanced at. So that gives us a better feel for it. Okay, so like right now, the thought process would be is let's gather more data, and then if we think we have to adjust, we can do that. I don't know if I would necessarily want to change either of those priorities, having now kind of talked about it a little bit, but I'd be curious to get other people's feedback as well as let's see how these bugs kind of play out from that perspective. I know if product managers will say, oh, well, this is priority 8 and SEV3, so therefore it's not even on my radar because I have so much more work. So we'll have to consider that aspect as well.
Yeah, and there's also the OKR for SUS though, right? I think, or with the general UX OKR, I'm not quite sure I remember where that one evolved to.
Well, that's the disconnect, right? Is there's a SUS score that says we're going to improve SUS. To do that, UX's assertion is that we have to fix this in a lot of places and fix it holistically to really get the SUS score to go up. But our prioritization and severity has this at a much lower level relative to how we do it. So the question would be: is do we have to revisit that? Because that's the break in the system. But like that's also the problem that we have is that there's going to be obviously a disconnect between those two, and I don't know if you could ever tightly couple those, to be honest, from that perspective.
Yeah, I agree with not tightly coupling them. I think I could be wrong, but it seems like the reason this is coming up is because it is affecting like overall usability and confidence in the platform, and therefore like this is why it's senior leadership cares about this to some degree, right?
It's also driving us all nuts.
Yeah.
Like let's put it that way. So then the question becomes is like, do you have a temporary change in prior severity? That's the fundamental question, I guess. Like what I'm trying not to do is change the whole system just to like put this on its head, but at the same time, maybe garner visibility. Maybe it's the other way to kind of think about it. Though if we start preventing these and we don't make the problem any worse, then maybe that helps too, right? While fixing some subset.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's some more. I'm just trying to. I agree. I'm not trying to like disrupt the whole, like add another line item in here for a priority item, or otherwise like keep adding complexity. But still trying to figure out how to work it into our overall framework here at a place that's not going to cause it to be 11, which means it's just not going to get done. Because I think if you go by the current partition framework, it's going to be an S3, S4. P3, P4, and it's just not going to get picked up for a long time because we're focused on SUS adoption and other things.
I wonder if we need to put in the priority list this is what the company is focused on kind of thing, where it's like, rather than thinking of this classification, think of it in terms of like, we're just focusing on this problem right now. And that because of that gets higher priority consideration. Okay, something to think about. Like I said, I wasn't expecting an answer today, Josh, and I'm also like I'm hesitant to add more priorities.
Yeah, I agree. I'm ready to have a lot.
But it'd
be nice to. Sorry, go ahead.
It does feel like we're broken here, but it like I don't necessarily like I don't like the solution of adding another priority on the long list as an example. So
yeah, I agree. I think the one I just wonder like whether we can. It feels like the class of problems is that like issues that erode confidence in the platform, even though not really like data loss, it just frustrates you and doesn't give you like. And so I wonder if we can try to work that into one of these higher priority items, that we can try and solve it long term, as opposed to having a sprint on this and then we all go back to our normalization framework and this ends up becoming a thing again like a year later or something like that.
Right. You and I are aligned on that, so that's good. Cool.
Hang on, Christopher, real quick. If UX is priority 8, there's still flexibility there based on the severity. So I'm thinking, like, I've got my Pedro hat on, he's our product designer. This severity one for UX says, I can't figure this out, users are blocked. I bet if I take that apply suggestions issue and send it to him and ask him as a UX bug, what would you rate this? I bet he would rate it as a severity 1. And that would put it into the next milestone and jump it up. So I am a little curious if we could just use the UX one. If I maybe ran some of these by our product designer, if he had seen them, what would he have labeled?
If you can take an action to kind of do that, I'd appreciate it, because I think that's a good exercise for us to kind of, and then it may just be an educational thing that we have to work through from that perspective. Okay.
That lines up nicely with Christie's charter as well, so I can support that. Thank you.
Okay. We're into the bonus 5 minutes of a normal GitLab meeting. Do we want to talk about number 3 real quick? And I'll set something up early next week to kind of continue the discussion. Basically what I want to talk about is what do we think we mean by improved quality tooling? And Tim, you have some thoughts?
Yeah, what I want to do on my side is what works quite well in that area is to do most probably in the application performance session, or perhaps in another format, in a special one, to at least record a video with some of the staff engineers, how you can debug such things with the developer tool so that you can slow down API calls, that you can completely block API calls. So to really figure out how you can simulate something to make something more robust. The current development track is way much, most of the time focused around the green path, but especially on such high used, especially even with simultaneous topics. I think we need to get more know-how on how to simulate that. And on the other hand, also, what are the topics that you need to think of when you're making changes there, that someone else can be changing this MR right in this second. So this might be also something that transient bugs come from, because someone else is pressing the button in the other direction. So that we think such things through and have a list for it, and have perhaps even a session on it where we can have some recordings.
I'll continue on to point B. So yeah, we have a KR especially for us, especially in Ramya's team, to do the same thing. So I see you and Tim, you and her being fully aligned here. I have heard GDK, and I want to question that because the GDK could use some help there in terms of clarity, and I don't want it to make this an optional tool that you run. It should just be a mandatory detection going forward. So I'm open to suggestions, and unfortunately out of time.
Without hearing the full proposal, I would say no. There is so much tooling already around in the Chrome developer tools where you can do exactly those things with tons of scripting, etc., that we even can hand out. I think the GDK team is so thin.
We don't have an SET for the decode system as well, so that's kind of a challenge. Another thing is what you said is correct, Tim. I don't think we have tests that spin up two user workflows, like watch UI, log in as a user, simulate backend calls, and see what this person sees. It could be some of the source here as well. We're out of time.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to be able to catch these at desktop level. I think it's got to be probably, I hate to say it, probably staging level almost. Like it's like a kind of a quality check that's post code commit. At least I think it's gonna be really hard to catch these early on, short of like chaos simulations on desktop, which like that is its own set of issues. Okay, cool. All right. Thanks everybody for the good discussion. It sounds like we've got a couple action items for myself, Michelle, and Tim. I'll set something up probably Tuesday or Wednesday. Thanks everybody for their time. This is a really good discussion. Thanks.